afternoon, everyone. My name is Bradley Laws. I lead the Union Foundation. I previously spent 3 years at Zilliqa, which is a Singapore-headquartered Layer 1. I led the ventures team there for a number of years. Most of the Union team's been working together for around 6, 7, 8 years now. The founding team actually started looking at trustless bridging on the Polkadot Kusama networks. They're core contributors to Cosm Wasm. Union's a Cosmos SDK. And now we are tackling essentially interoperability via ZK. So, as is the case with most sections of the blockchain space, interoperability isn't without its challenges, as we all know. I think we've all held our breath when trying to move assets between different chains at one stage or another. And what you'll see over time is that actually hasn't really improved too much. I think even just last week, there were a couple of hacks on different bridging solutions. Most of the time, this is coming down to the differences in tech stack, where the assets are moving. It's also to do with how the bridging solutions themselves are working. So us and maybe 1 or 2 other teams are looking at interoperability through the lens of ZK. And ultimately, what we envisage is a blockchain future whereby any tech stack, any chain, any user can connect to any other chain, any other user seamlessly in a very secure, because it's ZK way, in a kind of seamless interoperability world. Just to kind of point out some of the reasons why interop is actually really hard. There's a plethora of layer 1s, layer 2s, layer 3s now. That could be EVM-based, IBC-based, Move-based, could be Solana-type tech stacks as well. Ton could be native BTC. Each of those come with their own pros and cons. And so essentially, when you're trying to move assets between these different chains, there's a lot of kind of considerations to take into account, the different states, the consensus of each of them, the finality, and it just kind of leads us to a place where it's in a super fragmented industry, and whilst all the innovation's going on, we're kind of moving further and further apart. So this is kind of how we have seen essentially trust in the space, bearing in mind a lot of the blockchain and crypto philosophies like don't trust intermediaries, yet we kind of find ourselves in a position whereby there wasn't really a good way other than exchanges to move assets between different wallets and different users. So that's kind of what we're seeing here is trust me, bro. You've got semi-decentralized ways of moving assets around, which is essentially trust us, bro. So there's maybe a couple of players involved with, let's say, a multisig, and that in itself is very challenging and has its own difficulties. And then a very fully decentralized way of operating. I think this is ultimately where the industry wants to get to. Very trust minimized, but ultimately quite inefficient. So Union comes at it from a different lens. So we see decentralization as absolutely where the industry should be, and you shouldn't be trusting in the layer 1s themselves, the bridges, any of the interop solutions. And we look at this through consensus verification. Ultimately, what it means is we don't rely on multisigs or oracles. We have recursive and conditional light clients on each of the chains that we work with. And ultimately, what that means is that you can have the state lens of base being on Babylon and vice versa, Babylon state lens being on base at any given time. And what that means is that the light clients are always looking at consensus, they're always looking at settlement, and the ZK proof element to this means that we can actually do verification in about 5 seconds. We're looking to reduce that over time, but even consumer hardware can do it on about 7 seconds. So the ZK part of this is really important, and we've seen some of our ZK peers come into market recently, like Boundless, Async, and we think there's ultimately now ZK is really starting to fulfill its promise. I won't go into the image in too much detail, but ultimately what we're looking at here is what I've just been describing, which is essentially you'll have chain A and chain B you'll have our proven network internally and ultimately the verification going through, and the light clients enable us to do that. As I mentioned, we're a Cosmos SDK. It's been very much tweaked so that we're better, faster, more secure than Tendermint, and we can scale up to hundreds of validators. We launched a limited mainnet back in April when Babylon went live, so we supported the Genesis chain launch. And we've been doing a lot on the BTC side, but we're entirely chain agnostic. So within the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've set up the first trustless bridge on BSC. We launched Say 2 weeks ago. We announced Base last week. We've got Sui going live this week. And so we're looking to really scale up some of those chains where we think there'll be a lot of volume, a lot of drivers, a lot of applications, and a lot of ultimately asset transfers. This slide needs a little bit of an update, but just to give you an idea in terms of like just how agnostic we are. We plug into most of the EVM chains quite seamlessly. IBC, because we're also a Cosmos chain, that's no problem either. So I think we've got about 30 chains available on testnet, and we're scaling that up. Sui being the first move-based chain that's going live. We've got Aptos and Movement, I think within the next maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Some others to mention that aren't on here would be Bera Chain, BSC, as I said earlier. We've also got Babylon, Bob, Korn. We're doing a lot of work on the BTC L2 and sidechain side of things. And what it's ultimately allowed us to do is, because we can be chain agnostic, is that we can move assets between all of these different chains, but also we can also be the asset issuer. So in response to what we were seeing on the BTC side earlier in the year, we've actually just launched a BTC yield product. When you talk to a lot of BTC holders, they're buy and hold. The main thing for them is security, it's custody. And if you can offer them some yield, particularly BTC denominated yield, then that becomes quite interesting. That has kind of gone hand in hand with an explosion in DATs, digital asset treasury companies, who are basically taking public money, buy and hold, but also looking for some kind of differentiation. So we're working with a number of BTC miners, we're working with several DATs, we're working with protocols to deliver a seamless BTC in, BTC out denominated yield product. Gives an idea in terms of what is possible as a developer or as an asset issuer on Union. Essentially coming in at the top, you can work on any execution environment using any smart contract language. You can start with Union, you can then be moving into any of the chains that I've mentioned before, any point that is live. Essentially LSTs, RWA, we've got some really cool DeFi stuff going live as well. So as a layer one, we're always looking to build out the ecosystem, and we're funding that in several ways. And we think it's an interesting entry point for many devs to come into the space and use Union as their kind of launch pad into the wider Web3 industry. Ultimately, I guess words don't mean too much, but in terms of how we actually stack up versus the competition, here's a couple of metrics here. We're like constantly trying to boost the performance of the chain. Like I said, limited mainnet went live in April with Babylon. We're now up to public mainnet, which went live about a month ago. We went up to testnet version 9. We've processed about 330 million transactions. We've had a phased rollout over about 2.5 years. And so everything's very deliberate and always trying to optimize on the interop side. So like super interested to see where we can get this. That's been quite a journey for us. Long Hash were our Series A lead investors, as well as GCC. We've raised about 16 million over 2 rounds. Series A was last year, seed was the year before that. And we just kind of look at this as a very iterative process whereby we don't have all of the answers right now, but we think the only way to do interop well is via ZK. So we'll continue building this out. And for us, it's now about BD, about transacting. Our North Star really at the minute is bridge TVL. So we've seen a lot of the LSCs using us to move into Babylon. We've seen quite a lot going on with BSC in the last couple of weeks as well. So it's all pretty promising. And this is ultimately like kind of how we see the world. And I think this counts for retail not wanting to just have to send small transfers each time, like actually having an interop solution that plugs into their wallet seamlessly. They can move between different chains. They really don't want to think about the interop so much. And you just need to be highly performant. You need to be competing on a lot of these different metrics in terms of security and finality. And the best way to do that is modularity. So rather than a hub and spoke model, we're a point-to-point interop solution. It means that we cut off a lot of unnecessary, let's say, scalability points where some interops might have to set up a new validator on a network or may have to set up a lot of infrastructure. We can set up a light client in probably 24 hours, and that allows us then to scale across hundreds of thousands of chains if we think that's where the future is going to be, which it seems like that is the direction of travel. What it means as well is that we've seen institutions using us for yield optimization, where maybe they're looking at, they're on one chain looking to move across, and we can quite quickly move their assets around, looking for like yield optimization or opportunistic trading. We can get best execution on different chains as well. So there's a number of reasons that stack up, which even though interop is kind of sometimes a little bit of a less sexy topic than some others in Web3, we think that it's getting to a point here whereby the interconnected world is going to be super important. And if you're the number one player in that space, there's a lot of revenue opportunities. There's not just bridging fees, but as I mentioned earlier, the asset issuance on top as well. So yeah, so it's an exciting space. Kind of as per ecosystem map, just to give you an idea of who we're working with, most of the layer ones now, you'll see the BTC stuff is being built out. Tower's the most popular DEX on Babylon. SatLayer is a big restaking platform. A lot of the BTC staking and L2s you'll probably know. We also incubated Isha Finance, which is the biggest LST on Babylon as well. So trying to kind of be involved with some of the best-in-class projects on different ecosystems. They might be involved with an incubator. Maybe we funded them with a grant. We've also got an investment team. And that allows us to get a lot of visibility over the market and kind of work out where we think some of like the best ideas are going to come from. And there's some big launches going on. There's even just in the past few weeks, some of the big L1s, L2s have come to market. So each of those is looking for building blocks in their respective ecosystems, and we can be part of that. And obviously, we want to scale this up. One thing to mention is that as long as there's one prover on the network, Union will exist. We're censorship resistant, entirely permissionless, decentralized. So rather than being a chain going to another interop and trying to explain to them a business case to say, okay, we've got X amount of transactions, we want to plug into A, B, and C, kind of join the back of the queue in terms of enterprise and a sales cycle. It's plug and play. So to the extent possible, most chains can just use Union as if you're kind of plugging into Stripe on the payment side. And that just allows for a lot more efficiency, a lot more scalability, and obviously from our point of view increases our network effect because it just becomes so much easier for chains of any size to come in and use Union. We want to become just a de facto choice for that reason. Main point there is that like if the team isn't around but the provers are still there, then the network lives on. Yeah, we've been big on the BTC side, chain agnostic, but we think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think probably Q1, Q2 last year, there was a lot of funding going into the BTC side, big promises of yield and kind of let's introduce programmability on BTC. Let's have DeFi and BTC. I think a lot of those projects are still doing well and have kind of forged a path for what's coming next. When we talk to the big allocators and big LPs, we certainly see demand for BTC type products. Any yield, when you talk to them, LPs certainly aren't greedy. They're looking for about 2.5% if it's BTC denominated. If it's not BTC denominated, maybe a little bit more, but most of them don't really want to accept like a bunch of altcoins and like some yield from a protocol to get to like 3 or 4%, it's almost like not worth their time. So super interested to see what else is going to be coming on the BTC side. I think my time might be up, so I think I'm wrapping up now anyway. If you'd like to chat about chain integrations, about developer activity, any of the ecosystem initiatives that we've got, feel free to grab me after.